Story 1 of In the Village of Viger. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lee Smalley. In the Village of Viger by Duncan Campbell Scott. Whoever has from toil and stress put into ports of idleness, and watched the gleaming thistledown wheel in the soft air lazily blown, or leaning on the shady rail beneath the poplars silver pale, eyed in the shallow amber pools the black perch voyaging in schools, or heard the fisherman outpour his strange and questionable lore, while the cream-blossomed basswood trees boomed like an organ with the bees, or by blind fancy held aloof, has startled with prosaic hoof, beneath the willows in the shade, the wooing of a pretty maid, and traced the sharp or genial air of human nature everywhere, might find perchance the wandered fire around St. Joseph's sparkling spire, and wearied with the fume and strife, the complex joys and ills of life, might for an hour his worry staunch in pleasant Viger by the Blanche. Story 1. The Little Milliner. It was too true that the city was growing rapidly. As yet its arms were not long enough to embrace the little village of Viger, but before long they would be, and it was not a time that the inhabitants looked forward to with any pleasure. It was not to be wondered at, for few places were more pleasant to live in. The houses, half hidden amid the trees, clustered around the slim steeple of St. Joseph's, which flashed like a naked poniard in the sun. They were old, and the village was sleepy, almost dozing, since the mill, behind the rise of land on the Blanche, had shut down. The miller had died, and who would trouble to grind what little grist came to the mill when flour was so cheap? But while the beech groves lasted, and the Blanche continued to run, it seemed impossible that any change could come. The change was coming, however, rapidly enough. Even now, on still nights, above the noise of the frogs in the pools, you could hear the rumble of the street cars and the faint tinkle of their bells, and when the air was moist the whole southern sky was luminous with the reflection of thousands of gas lamps. But when the time came for Viger to be mentioned in the city papers as one of the outlying wards, what a change there would be! There would be no unfenced fields, full of little inequalities and covered with short grass. There would be no deep pools, where the quarries had been, and where the boys pelted the frogs. There would be no more beech groves, where the children could gather nuts. And the dread pool, which had filled the shaft where old Denyu, years ago, mined for gold, would cease to exist. But in the meantime the boys of Viger roamed over the unclosed fields and pelted the frogs, and the boldest ventured to roll huge stones into Denyu's pit, and only waited to see the green slime come working up to the surface before scampering away, their flesh creeping with the idea that it was old Denyu himself who was stirring up the water in a rage. New houses had already commenced to spring up in all directions, and there was a large influx of the laboring population, which overflows from large cities. Even on the main street of Viger, on a lot which had been vacant ever since it was a lot, the workmen had built a foundation. After a while it was finished, when men from the city came and put up the oddest wooden house that one could imagine. It was perfectly square. There was a window and a door in front, a window at the side, and a window upstairs. There were many surmises as to the probable occupant of such a diminutive habitation, and the widow Laroque, who made dresses and trimmed hats, and whose shop was directly opposite, and next door to the post office, suffered greatly from unsatisfied curiosity. No one who looked like the proprietor was ever seen near the place. The foreman of the laborers who were working at the house seemed to know nothing. All that he said, in answer to questions, was, "I have my orders." At last the house was ready. It was painted within and without, and Madame Laroque could scarcely believe her eyes when, one morning, a man came from the city with a small sign under his arm and nailed it above the door. It bore these words: Mademoiselle Gieux, milliner. "Ah," said Madame Laroque,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?